Good morning, Zach. How are you?
Double-handed wave, man. That's how good of a mood I'm in. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I mean, Rivian's not doing too good, but I'm doing good.
Yeah, I want to talk about Rivian. At some point this morning, I want to talk about Rivian. I'm doing good because I got a tan at the Miami Formula One. Just me and the boats
Yeah, look, it looks
on the
nice.
water.
Watch out for those manatees. Well, I'm doing good because I've got the Ford F-150 Lightning Pro behind me, which is just an amazing truck. So, I mean, doing wonderful. Hopefully, it doesn't run me over. It's right behind me, but doing well. Let's kick it off with some news today, shall we?
I would love to hear it.
All right. Why not dive right into the Rivian topic? Because Rivian's not having a good day. I'm sure CEO RJ Scaringe is maybe taking the day off and hitting the beach or something because Rivian stock is down another like 15% today, and we don't give financial advice here, but Ford has, how who knows how many financial advisors, and they've decided to unload a significant chunk of their stake in the company. And I wonder what that says about what Ford knows with what's going on at Rivian. Do you think there's financial troubles? Is it production hell as Elon Musk had with Tesla? Is Ford just going to go their own way?
Does
Cue
this
Fleetwood
does
Mac,
this not
but
d-
I don't know.
does this not just suggest to you that the idea of starting up an electric car company, it's not that easy, right? Like look at Lucid in the first quarter. They delivered what 360 vehicles and everyone's doing, high fives and jumping. I was about to say jumping jacks, but I don't think you do those when you're happy. But giving each other attaboys, like I'm not so sure it's easy to start up an EV automaker. And you look at Ford divesting today, selling, I think it was 8 million shares as the stock's tanking. And remember, Ford came out, I don't know, you'll know better than I, but at some point and said, hey, actually, we're not going to co-develop anything with Rivian. We're going to go at our own. And then you're right. You've got the F-150 Lightning right behind you. People are super excited about what the legacy OEMs are doing in the EV space, which was not how we thought about this a couple of years ago. Is you had to be a brand new company. You have to go at your own. Ford F-150 Lightning, Chevy Silverado EV. Bet you those are going to be the best-selling EV pickup trucks, not the Cybertruck, not the Rivian, not the Lucid doesn't make a pickup truck, but who knows, they might.
They have an SUV on the way. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But yeah, it really seems like Ford, General Motors, Stellantis, and other legacy OEMs, they've started to see that they actually have an advantage that even Tesla and other electric vehicle startups did not have, which is experience scaling production. Now, whether that's battery supply chains or actually building the vehicles, what's become clear is that Ford's going to go their own way because they see that they have some efficiencies they can insert into the EV production process that the likes of Rivian and then Lucid, even Tesla, they struggle with. I mean, how many factories does Ford already have? I don't know. It's like what, a dozen maybe?
Plenty.
Yeah. Lucid basically has, I mean, Rivian basically has one factory and another one on the way.
Yeah.
But not to mention the fact that they are basically competitors now, because we now know that Ford is really accelerating and ramping up production of the F-150 Lightning. And would you call that a competitor to the Rivian R1T? I mean, they're in very different price points, but there are some of the only electric trucks coming out in 2022. So I'd say they're competitors. Maybe,
100% they're competitors.
yeah, maybe not by like preference, because I'm sure someone who's shopping a $45,000 base F-150 Lightning Pro would probably not be shopping for a $100,000 Rivian. But if you need an electric truck and you're forced into that decision, we'd call them competitors, right? So it's just really amazing that Ford is taking this step, stepping away from the Rivian partnership even further. They're only selling about 8 million shares of their 100 million or so shares that they have in the company, but still, that's a lot of money. And like I said, we don't give financial advice, but watch out, you guys.
It is interesting. I know some of the initial Ford F-150s or the Lightnings are coming off the production lines, getting into people's hands. I think a lot of them are actually intended for commercial use right now as well, or for commercial customers. So it's interesting. There's a long tail here of people that are interested in getting their hands on the F-150 Lightnings, and it's going to take a while for them, everyone to be fulfilled. But Definitely their competitors, and definitely Ford has the upper hand there. Not surprised to see the news around Rivian today and over the past couple of weeks, honestly.
Yeah, a completely different move that Ford is doing versus the other automakers is 1 out of 5 of their F-150 Lightning trucks in production is actually the Pro trim. That's the most affordable trim. Now, these first F-150 Lightning Pros in production are intended for fleet customers, so commercial customers. But that's where we need to see a lot of change if we're going to be talking about EV domination and EVs taking over market shares. Let's think about fleets for a second. I wonder how many vehicles the average truck fleet would purchase for a large customer. I'm guessing it would be in the hundreds to thousands if you're looking at, for example, American Electric Power in my region. I see them driving around F-150s every day going to work on different power infrastructure related projects. Imagine if that customer went all electric. So Ford is thinking about this as they're beginning to produce the F-150 Lightning. Production started just a few weeks ago, and we already know that they have made several hundred. So they're not crawling to a start. They're like diving right in. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, they've been waiting for the starting blocks. They've been preparing and they're moving right ahead. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. And you've got to imagine Ford is going to dominate for a while until Chevy comes out with the Silverado EV. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
So Matt in the chat brought up how just an interesting fact. Got to get into this real quick. The creator of Dyson vacuums did indeed design and make a prototype for an electric vehicle. But after spending billions of his own money, he did abandon that project. So, Matt, this is another great example of how difficult it is to actually get into the electric vehicle business. Legacy automakers, they know how to create production ramp ups. They know how to make the factory assembly line, but I mean, not any average Joe can or Jane can dive into that. So yeah. Next, Lucid.
Let's go to Lucid. And then I know we start with the news, Justin, but I would like to hit on the title of today's stream. I want to make sure people get the insight into the incentives. And you wrote an awesome article on this as well. So we can go Lucid, but we got to make sure we hit on incentives.
Yeah, so today's headline topic is going to be all about EV incentives because there are some new incentives. There are some that just expired you need to know about. And we're just going to get an overall status update on both federal and state level incentives. So if you're looking to quote unquote get paid to go electric, make sure and tune in about 10 minutes. We'll talk all about the EV incentive updates. But let's talk Lucid real quick. Now,
Yes.
Q1 of 2022 was much better for Lucid than the last quarter of 2021. So in Q1, Lucid delivered 360 vehicles. I mean, that's not a lot, but it's better than the 125 delivered in the quarter before. So CEO Peter Rawlinson still says that they're going to be able to produce between 12,000 and 14,000 Air sedans this year at their factory in Arizona. That's significant because recently Lucid cut down their production guidance from 20,000 planned Lucid Air vehicles. So the supply chain's hitting everyone, especially Lucid, but they're also raising prices by quite a bit. Now, I don't know about you, Zach. I can't quite afford a Lucid, but it's getting further out of reach because I mean, they're going from starting prices around 80,000 to starting prices around 90,000. And the top level trim of the Lucid Air, which they call the Grand Touring Performance trim, will now start at $181,000.
I got to tell you, man, I wish we could here at YAA be like, all right, we're going to get to our guidance for the year is 10,000 members are going to join. And we go through the first quarter and 360 joined, and we can look at people without smiling, without laughing, and say, no. The other 9,700 are right around the corner. Don't worry. Excuse me, 9,640. They're over there. They're in the marina still. We just got to talk to them. Get out of here, man. I'm thinking about, bear with me for a second, Justin. But what I'm thinking about is
there's not a big enough bowl to make that much poop.
Oh, we love you, Ray.
You tell me though, Justin, that guidance is ridiculous. The fact that it's up, 250% over Q4 of last year. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I'm telling you, man, I just think this year, especially again, not financial advice, but you don't have to look that far to see what's going on in the stock market. I think you're going to see some consolidation, or at least some companies that get a little they get on some delicate footing here because you got to actually be able to sell cars.
Yeah, and I can only wonder how many consumers can actually afford $180,000 cars, or let's say the lower end of the Lucid lineup, which is around 100,000 when you include tax. $100,000 car. Are they really going to be selling 13,000 this year when Tesla still has 75% market share? I mean, the Model S is a top selling luxury EV for a reason. It's been around for 10 years now. The Model S has been around, I think, for 9 years. That's pretty amazing. So if you're going to spend $100,000 to $180,000 on a luxury sedan, I would think that most consumers would want one with some kind of track record rather than something that's just brand new, unknown reliability, unknown battery powertrain. I don't know. Tesla might have an advantage here. And let's keep in mind that Lucid CEO Peter Rawlinson actually has origins as a top engineer at Tesla back around 2010. He doesn't have a good relationship with Elon Musk. So they are in an interesting bit of competition. Right now, it really looks like Tesla's winning, but we'll see what Lucid has in store. In 2024, Lucid plans to launch the Gravity electric SUV. This is going to be a full-sized SUV. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Rivian R1S, but the Rivian R1S is a full-sized electric SUV. The Gravity is going to be along the same vein with a 7-seat layout. And who knows what the price tag will be.
Well, it'll be enough so that Lucid CEO can afford that, be paid that $256 million. To be fair, equity compensation, so it's not cash, but still, man, if we could miss deadlines like that, if we could miss our mile markers here on the YAA side, still get compensated like that, then we could afford a Lucid Air. But unfortunately, that's not how life works. Although I guess for some, that is how it works.
We got a little trivia for the viewers today. All right. So what is the top battery maker in the world by volume? Who makes and sells the most batteries to automakers in the world? We'll come back to that in about 3 minutes. So let us know in the comments. Let's talk Volvo real quick. So Volvo and Polestar, of course, their sales have been hit pretty hard by the supply chain shortages, the chip shortages. But let's take a look at the growth of their electric and plug-in vehicle models. So in the United States, Volvo's plug-in cars under the Recharge label were 44% of Volvo's total sales in the United States in April. 44%. That's a high market share. Now, I guess you can't really call it a market share because it's just
high percentage of sales.
Yeah, high percentage of sales. That's pretty impressive to me. But now we got to dig into the details and see what the facts are. So it actually turns out that the vast majority were plug-in hybrids. That's still good, and that still works for a lot of drivers out there. I mean, I recommend plug-in hybrids to people all the time. If you live in an area where charging is not ideal, or you travel a lot, and sometimes you just want the benefits of combustion, plug-in hybrids are a great way to go. Well, it looks like about 90% of Volvo's plug-in sales in April were actually plug-in hybrids, so not fully electric vehicles. I think that's pretty interesting. What about you, Zach?
Definitely. Even where I live here outside Washington, D.C. or in Washington, D.C., I see the Volvos. They all end in the 8. If you see a S8, if you see an XC90 8 or whatever the heck it is, you've got the port at the beginning or at the front of the vehicle where they do the charging. Volvo makes some damn good looking cars. I'd love to see Polestar grow more. Polestar's vehicles are super interesting looking, but they're a relatively small player in the grand scheme of things. They've grown considerably quarter over quarter, but still a relatively small player.
And I wonder what a Polestar SUV would look like.
Something tells me it'll be a little bit of an XC90 ripoff, but that's just my 2 cents.
I've always been a fan of Volvo and Polestar's exterior design, but not quite their interior design. Not sure why. I guess it's a little too Nordic for my taste. But
interesting. Yeah. As a former, I owned an S90. I loved the interior. I had the inscription.
Well, maybe you can step into.
You know why I'm saying so many? You know why I'm saying so much? Because I wish I still owned it because it would have appreciated like 100%
oh yes,
when I sold it.
Have. Cars are investments, everyone. At least in 2022. All right, so we have one of our guests on the show today. I'm sorry, one of our viewers, Stan. Stan says CATL. which if you pronounce it, it would be cattle. Um, yes, so CATL is the #1 battery producer in the world, and guess what? They are going to be producing batteries here in the United States. So CATL is based out of China, but they supply batteries to automakers around the globe, including Tesla. They have major contracts with BMW and Ford. Now, it looks like they're going to be building a brand new factory either in South Carolina or Kentucky to supply batteries to Ford and BMW. As soon as next year, possibly 2024, well, they'll be starting production of the factory next year. But it's just really exciting for anyone involved in the growing battery and electric vehicle infrastructure business here in the southeastern US, where I'm located in West Virginia. It's just amazing seeing this new economic opportunity coming to the region. We're known for a lot of other things like, coal, agriculture, things like that, industrial manufacturing. So it's just really
Mhm.
amazing to see the diversification of the economy here branching out into electric vehicles. Now, I wonder, is this going to be the Ford partnership that supplies batteries for the F-150 Lightning? I'm not sure. I'll have to look into that.
Do you remember when the drafted legislation last year, the Build Back Better bill, and it had the EV tax credit language in there that ultimately didn't pass? Do you remember when it had language around the battery to get an extra, I don't know, $500 in incentives or $1,500 in incentives? The battery has to be produced by unionized labor in the United States, for example. Do you think we're going to see more and more of the parts suppliers to electric vehicles move to have operations in the United States so that they can do more business because their channel partners, the actual OEMs, are going to want them to be here so that they can have government subsidies essentially help pay for consumers to ultimately purchase their vehicles? Or do you think the federal government's going to kind of like drop that? You know what? If you get the battery from any other country, no big deal. Doesn't have to be made here in America. What's your stance or what's your thinking about that?
So I really think that particular aspect of possible tax credit revisions is going to be dead. I mean, we're going to talk about that in a second, but it looks like that's not happening. What I do think is that various industries around the world, not just the automotive industry, they're seeing the benefits of keeping their supply chains more local.
Yeah.
And there's a huge shift going on right now in the mining industries of the United States. So there are tons of new mining industries starting up focusing on lithium, a few other rare earth metals, but lithium's the big one I know about. There's a new mine going in North Carolina, so that would be very local for a battery factory in either Kentucky or South Carolina. There
Yeah.
are some in the western United States where thousands and thousands of acres have been bought up in preparation for new lithium mines. So I personally think that now that the writing on the wall is crystal clear, EVs are going to be the future. All of these companies that have the opportunity to make billions of dollars off of the growth of the battery industry, they're basically planning out how are they going to maximize their profits and take full advantage of the demand that is sure to come. Because RJ Scaringe from Rivian, he says that battery shortages are going to be the next chip shortage. And that may very well be true. So I think these companies who have the opportunity to avoid a shortage and make the most money when things get tight in a few years, they're trying to basically outdo each other to make sure that they have the supply chains in place already that they'll need.
Because we've seen this movie play out. I mean, we're currently in, I don't know, hopefully one of the final acts of this movie when it comes to the chip shortage. Sadly, for new cars, it's not just chips anymore. It's wiring harnesses and a variety of other things because of the war. But you're right. I mean, it makes sense. Be here local, rely less on a global supply chain. The challenge or the tricky thing that I see, Justin, is that typically, I'm no economist, but typically it's more expensive to do things in the United States than to do them in other countries. People get paid more here than in some other countries. And I think the cost to actually set up this infrastructure, the mine, for example, is going to be more expensive here than, I don't know, Brazil or name a place. And so ultimately that I sense that things are just going to continue to get more expensive on the EV path. And it's kind of interesting to think that there's this push and it's very obvious it's an all-in bet on EVs, but at the same time the price point's not attainable for most Americans. And so
Yes.
then you're probably going to have a lot of people that are ultimately going to be priced out and continuing to buy iced cars, older and older ICE cars. Super interesting to see. Just like, I don't know what that means, but it's really interesting to think about 10 years from now. when a 15-year-old Nissan Maxima is like the thing to have when you can't afford a $50,000 or $60,000 starting price point on the Subaru Solterra, for example.
Maybe there will be a resurgence of hybrid powertrains in like 10 years because nobody can afford an EV. I mean, anything's in the cards. I agree 100% with what you said, Zach.
And to that point, Justin, just to harp on it for a second, there's so much advancement in technology. Would you not be surprised if there are hybrid powertrains that get 80, 90, 100 miles to the gallon, 10 years from now? I would be really surprised if that's not the case. Like Toyota, for example, who's still betting a lot on hybrid powertrains. I think that type of vehicle, you give me a RAV4 Prime. Have Ford and Chevy proven anything compared to like the Cybertrucks of the world? They've proven that people want just like the same thing. Just give me a different powertrain. I'm telling you, I think a Toyota RAV4 Prime 10 years from now that gets, I don't know, named 75 miles to the gallon outsells any EV, not because people don't want a full EV, not because the charging infrastructure isn't there, but because the price point is actually attainable, more attainable.
I have a prediction, a bold prediction. I think prices for EVs are going to stay sky high until solid state batteries do become attainable and affordable and mass producible after 2025. So unfortunately, we're looking at 3 to 5 year timeline. But I think solid state batteries will finally be what we've been waiting for to get costs down. There will not be mainstream affordable electric vehicles with 500-mile ranges. I do not see that. I see more affordable electric vehicles with 250-mile ranges and charging infrastructure becoming much more built out and accessible. So if we're thinking about even the possibility of a battery shortage, it's going to be build cars with the same or less range, just have chargers easier to access and quicker charging. That's my opinion.
Definitely.
Should we talk about incentives today?
Please.
Yes. So if you're thinking about buying an electric vehicle.
Wait.
Show me the money. Show me the money.
Well, we better show them the money then. Okay. So in 2022, let's start out with what federal incentives you can get if you're thinking about buying an electric vehicle. So federally, we all, in theory, file our federal taxes. Now,
I filed mine.
Here's an interesting little tidbit about how the current federal EV tax incentive is built. It's structured so that if you owe more taxes, federal taxes, you get the greater benefit. So there have been plenty who have argued, well, this current federal tax credit is kind of built for the wealthy. Because if you only owe, let's say, $3,500 in federal taxes every year, if you buy an electric vehicle in 2022, you can claim up to $3,500 in federal EV tax credits. All right. So to take a step back, electric vehicles besides those sold by Tesla or General Motors, they qualify for up to $7,500 in federal EV tax credits. Now, this is not refundable. You're not going to get a check in the mail, but it is a tax credit. So why is Tesla and General Motors not a part of this federal EV tax credit? Because they've already reached their 200,000 sale limit that is built into the existing tax credit. Now, so let's think about every other electric vehicle from Lucid to Rivian to my Ioniq 5 to Chevy. Well, actually, Chevy is not a part of it. So these electric vehicles, let's say I have a tax liability of $8,000 this year. Well, I bought an Ioniq 5 in 2022, so I'm able to claim the full $7,500 from my federal taxes. But what if my neighbor buys, let's say, a Nissan Leaf, and it's a pretty affordable car? It starts at, about $30,000. But let's say my neighbor's tax liability is only $4,000. Well, they're only going to get to take advantage of that $4,000 tax credit, not the full $7,500. So there have been efforts to revise the federal EV tax credit, but so far none of them have gotten close to passage. There is nothing in the pipeline that's looking like it's going to actually make it through. So I'm going to go ahead and say that for the rest of 2022, the federal EV tax credit looks like it's going to stay as it is.
And with that in mind, then the state level incentives become even more important than they were before. Some states are much more aggressive in trying to help their constituency purchase EVs than others.
Yeah, so I'll make sure and drop the link to our brand new YAA resource to the states with the guide to the states with the best EV incentives. I'll drop that link into the pinned comments. But what we found is that it's just a huge patchwork with vast differences in how much money basically state governments will pay you to buy an electric vehicle. Where I live in West Virginia, zilch, not a single electric vehicle incentive. But let's say you go a few states over to New Jersey, they recently had up to $5,000 in just rebates for buying an electric vehicle. That program has since expired, but you can still get a full state sales tax exemption for buying an electric vehicle. If you buy a Lucid Air, that could be worth close to $10,000, eliminating that state sales tax liability. Pretty amazing. Now let's take a look at some of the states with the best electric vehicle incentives, shall we? Are we able to pull this up? All right.
I can do it. You want to do it? You want me to do it?
You do it.
On it.
We already talked about New Jersey. Let's start with California. So consistently, like 40% of America's EV sales are in California, and it's been because of the incentives. So right now, it's down to a $2,000 rebate. In the past, it has been higher, but Tesla's recent price increases have actually removed eligibility for Tesla from California's state rebate. So Tesla, the 75% market share, no longer qualifies for the state incentive in California. Let's move on to Colorado, though. Colorado is really interesting. They've been going through the phase out process for their $2,500 state tax credit incentive. It's been very, very successful. I've even heard of electric vehicle journalists like myself moving to Colorado specifically to be able to buy and sell electric vehicles and constantly take advantage of the tax credit. Very, very interesting. And a major power supplier in Colorado, Xcel Energy, offers large upfront rebates for electric vehicles too. So that's gone from being just, a typical Western state to one of the best states for a electric vehicle purchase. Connecticut. Incentive amounts currently range from $4,250 for a battery electric vehicle to lower amounts for plug-in hybrids around $2,000 and up to $9,000 for a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle. Why? It's not worth it, you guys. Don't go out there and buy a hydrogen-powered vehicle just for this Connecticut incentive. Where are you gonna get your hydrogen at? There might be one, maybe two hydrogen fuel stations in Connecticut.
What is it? The Toyota Mirai?
Toyota Mirai is currently the only hydrogen-powered vehicle you can buy. The Toyota Mirai. Don't do it.
That could have been my trivia question. Damn, but I wasn't sure if my answer was right.
Send me a message at justin@joinyaa.com if you need to be talked out of buying a Toyota Mirai. I will help you. Okay, I will help you. Massachusetts received $2,500 for a new electric vehicle and $1,500 for a new plug-in hybrid. You have to make the purchase in state. So if I was living in Boston, but I wanted to go to Long Island to buy an Ioniq 5 from Manny at Hyundai 112, just like I did, I would not be able to get that state incentive if I bought it out of state. Oregon. The West Coast is basically the land of EVs. Oregon, Washington, California. In Oregon, you can get up to $2,500 for the purchase or lease of a qualifying new EV. And low or moderate income residents can get additional funds to help with the purchase of an EV. Almost done. New York. So the Charge New York initiative offers rebates of up to $2,000 for new car purchases or leases. And then we've got Delaware, where $2,500 in rebates are available for the purchase of an electric vehicle that does not exceed $60,000 in cost. So the Tesla Model Y no longer qualifies in Delaware. You'd have to go with the Model 3. I guess that's one benefit of not having any state incentives where I live in West Virginia, is I was not faced with the decision of, do I buy the limited trim because I would not qualify for the state incentive? Do I have to buy the base trim just to qualify for the state incentive? There are states around the country where buyers have to make that decision. Do they want the comforts that they desire and take a pass on the state incentive? I mean, that's a tough decision. I know that there are several states around the country where my Ioniq 5 limited trim would not have qualified for any state incentives. So I probably would have settled for cloth seats at $45,000. I don't know.
It's pretty interesting to think, because everything's done on this state by state basis. And you said it a moment ago, you don't anticipate in 2022 that the federal EV tax incentives or hybrid tax incentives, any tax incentives will be changed. And it pains me to say it, but I think you're probably right. We need something done on the federal level, though, if we're actually going to see the mass adoption of EVs, again, because they're so expensive. And honestly, some of these brackets, like $60,000, I actually think you should probably make that threshold like $70,000 because more and more electric vehicles are costing $60,000. Ioniq 5, good example of that.
Yeah, we had one of our listeners, Barry, send us a message sharing that Illinois is actually launching a brand new tax credit. We should share with the viewers real quick. So, starting in July, you can get up to $4,000 in rebates for buying an electric car in Illinois. Now, here's the fine print. Your income cannot be higher than 80% of the median income in your region.
Wow.
So, fine print, guys. Always read it.
That's really interesting. I've never heard of a tax incentive on a vehicle tied back to median income in your region. Fascinating.
Yes. So we'll see how the scene kind of shifts and changes and redefines itself over the next few years as state legislatures and federal politicians get together and decide what are they going to do. I don't know.
Definitely. Well, hey, I know what we're going to do. We'll be back on Wednesday, 11 a.m. on the East Coast, 8 a.m. on the West Coast. Something tells me there's going to be more news stories that have broken between now and then, plus another topic or two that you're going to want to share and enlighten us all about, Justin. I feel pretty confident about that.
For sure. And make sure everyone joins us at the YAA Community Forum. Join YAA.com, where you can meet other EV nerds, people who just want to know more about electric vehicles or just the whole car buying process. We've got experts that can help you with all things cars over at YAA.
Oh, and P.S. I don't know if you know this. This is officially just what I do. The Tesla extended warranty. We're going to be offering that, I think, like next week. I don't know. I was talking to the team last week and everything's working from the quoting standpoint. So if you want to get a Tesla extended warranty, not through Tesla, take a shot with us. The reason I say take a shot is because we have absolutely no clue if they'll work with us yet. So you can learn while we learn. Should be a fun adventure. We'll still pay for things, to be clear. We'll still pay for them. We just don't know if they'll let us pay on your behalf or if you'll have to pay and we reimburse you. So I don't want to confuse people there.
And we'd really love to know more about what the listeners and viewers would like to learn about here on the show. So please send me an email, drop us comments over at the YAA Community Forum. Let us know what you'd like to learn about on the next episode of Plugged In.
All right, Justin, this was fun. Appreciate your time as always.
Thank you.